of the Brian Perras Show. We're coming to you live today, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm excited for this guest that I have today. We're going to be talking election fraud, election data. This guy has the data. He's been filing in the legislative system in Tallahassee, in Florida. And he will be on with me here shortly. And I'm excited to have Chris on today. And he is now. This is exciting. Chris, I was just letting people know a little bit what's going on here today. And let me bring you on. No further ado. Everyone, I want to introduce Chris Gleason to the show. Thank you for coming, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
I'm excited to have you, brother, because you've been a patriot in this fight of actually the election fraud for a while. You've actually done so much work to do this, and I just want people to know you're just an everyday person. You're not an elected official or nothing. So if you can just go into it, this floor is yours, and I'm grateful to have you here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I'm a tech guy. I'm a data guy. That's really my background, and I'm an entrepreneur. And I kind of got into the whole election integrity stuff by absolute accident. Didn't this is not how I planned on spending my time, but we really need people who are skilled to spend their time doing this and getting involved.
Yes, sir.
I mean, this is the most important thing. I mean, you're a veteran, right? I'm a veteran. It's important. We swore an oath that a lot of people have broken, and the people
too many.
And the people that we've entrusted to run our elections, they're not good people.
No, they're not.
And they're committing crimes. And
so I'm gonna kind of pick your brain as an everyday person, because there's a lot of people who probably believe this, but no one, they say, well, I never see the evidence. So how do people go find this evidence? How do they see? It's common sense just by watching and seeing what's going on. But for the person who can't really, that's trying to wake up, but yet is still doubt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. So a lot of people, after 2020, a lot of people started asking questions. A lot of people were like, yeah, this doesn't seem right. This isn't right. And there's actually a lot of people for quite a while who have been of that opinion. They're like, something doesn't smell right, And
yes.
For a while, I've been asking these questions. I've been asking, how do these people keep getting elected? How is this possible? And, people would say, oh, well, it's the whole thing, not my guy. It's not my congressman. It's not my senator. I don't buy that anymore. And big data,
real quick on that, the one I like
extensively.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just saying, I was gonna throw a little joke in there. The politician does say, oh, well, I got elected, so what's it like? We won. I'm like, who's we? We didn't win. Maybe you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, well, here's the thing. We know that the Purple Party, right? The Uniparty, the bad guys, the Democrats, and the Rhinos, right? They've been working together hand in glove for years.
Yes.
And, it's a big, George Carlin did a thing on it, right? It's a private club and you're not in it. And, people may enter it with the best of intentions, but once they get in, they get compromised and they make concessions. And then, one thing after another. But what was interesting is, as I got into this, I saw that a lot of these people who were elected really shouldn't have been elected to begin with. And as we started digging into, these problems, these things that we would see, a lot of things didn't make sense. And so we found a bunch of really crazy stuff with the voter rolls really early on. We saw things in the primary in 2022. We saw a lot of stuff that we were asking questions about. Things like vote by mail ballots being forwarded, right? And so I went to, we saw that they were being forwarded between Pinellas and Pasco. So you ran in Pasco County, and then we saw some stuff going on there. And we asked questions about that. We asked questions to the SOE and Pasco. What's that?
Brian Corley, Pasco County Supervisor elect.
That's right. That's right.
And so real quick too, to add, I was originally in Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco before the redistricting. So what you're about to say with the Pinellas County Supervisor elections, I have some. I think you collected most of my stuff that I had from that, and you'll know that I dealt with those same people. So I know for a fact what you're saying. Going to say for sure about Pinellas is 100, but Pasco, yeah. Please go into a little bit about the Pasco one if you don't mind.
Sure.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So as I started getting involved here locally in Florida, so I had started really on a data project helping out Roger Stone and a couple of candidates, a candidate for senator in Oklahoma and a candidate for Congress in Washington State. And I had discovered some massive issues with campaign finance violations in Washington State. And then I validated that in Oklahoma. And then I confirmed it here in Florida. And so I went to a friend of mine who was a retired FBI agent. And I said, hey, I found all this crazy stuff. What should I do with this? And he's like, well, let me hook you up with a friend of mine who does election integrity stuff here in Florida. I'm like, okay. And he hoodwinked me into getting to be a part of his nonprofit that he was involved with. And that was kind of how I got hoodwinked into Florida. And so as we were doing this, we started asking questions. We started doing public records requests. And the SOE for Pasco County, he was probably one of the more difficult ones. Him and Pinellas County, they were really difficult to get data out of.
Sure were.
And what I found interesting about that over the past couple of years now that I've been at this, I find that the people who hide the data the most, the people who give us the hardest time, rather than just handing over what we ask for, they've got something to hide, you know? And what was interesting about Corley was that he actually did help us, but not in the way that you would think that he would be helping us, right? So what Corley did is Corley opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of these SOEs are getting marching orders from the Florida Supervisors of Elections, Inc. And the Florida—
Who runs that, Chris? Who runs that?
That's a good question. The Florida Supervisors of Elections, Inc. It's an illegal lobbyist group that's run by a guy by the name of David Ramba, who's a crooked lobbyist. And this group, they illegally lobby for and on the part of the supervisors of elections. And what they do is they scheme and they figure out ways to not comply with public records requests, to hide the data, to subvert our elections. It's a subversive organization, and they actively work against the best interests of we the people whose elections this are. I mean, so think about that, right?
Yep.
So you have an illegal lobbyist organization that is funded by the counties, all right? Because the counties, each county, they pay the funds the membership fees for this organization that works actively against the taxpayer, the voter, to hide the data from the elections. Now, who else funds the organization is the election fraud mafia. That would be your election systems like Dominion, like ESNS, like VR systems, like anybody, Clear Ballot, like any of these companies that provide technology services that are being used to subvert our elections here in Florida. So ultimately, we're paying for them, the subversive organization, to hide and violate the Florida Constitution. Because here's a fun fact. In Florida, open records are it's a constitutional right. Okay. So what we see is that this organization, the Florida Supervisors of Elections, Inc., they actively work to subvert our elections and public records. And then now what we've seen, and based on all of the evidence that we've been collecting for a while now, we see that they have disenfranchised hundreds and hundreds of thousands of, or many, 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 many hundreds of thousands of Florida voters. They've disenfranchised us. And then what they've done is they've lobbied to hide the evidence of the crimes of this. It's crazy. I mean, you can't, I mean, Florida has a treason statute.
Yeah.
And that's what treason is, when you work to overthrow a constitutional form of government. Because at the end of the day, right, all government power is derived from the consent of the governed. And if you're rigging elections,
that's right,
you don't have the consent of the governed.
So let's just play hypothetical, Chris. We have the evidence. Who are we trying to present it to? And if, say, they're involved in it, where do
we go from here?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Where do we go from here? So we've been collecting evidence. There's still more evidence to collect. Now, what they're doing is they're fighting us tooth and nail over this stuff. And, you see a lot of people say, oh, well, there's no evidence, or, the courts said, they investigated this. No, the courts didn't. The courts haven't heard any of these cases on their merits, because you've got a lot of corrupt judges who are beneficiaries of the election fraud mafia, So I've been fighting here in Pinellas County in the courts against Julie Marcus and Dustin Chase and the Pinellas County Supervisors of Elections Office.
Mm-hmm.
So they altered election documents, hiding the number of disenfranchised voters that they illegally disenfranchised through the use of ES&S voting machines, adjudicating ballots as being 100% blank. But they're not 100% blank. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So the corrupt judge in my case claims, oh, well.
What judge is that? Do you know the judge's name?
Yeah, Judge Patricia Muscarella. And so we were looking to get the system logs for the tabulators. And what was interesting is in Pinellas County, they weren't reporting the blank ballot data. They also weren't reporting the provisional votes cast data. And so I had to sue them to get to turn over that data to us. And what they did was they said, oh, well, we'll give it to you, but it's going to cost you $35,000 because we have to redact data. I'm like, no, you don't. Yeah. I mean, so they want to redact date and time stamps, the audit logs of our elections, or even the reporting of the elections, which, by the way, they are required to provide and publish at no cost. Yeah. But they want to hide stuff.
So how can they get away with that, Chris?
Well, if you have a crooked judge that's part of the election fraud RICO operation,
Exactly. So how can you request a new judge, or can you request
well,
uh,
here's the
appellate
funny.
court?
Yeah, so here's the funny thing about that, right? The judge, who, by the way, was a beneficiary of this in her own election,
Court.
mind you, is subject to this, right?
And that's Patricia. Patricia, what's her name again?
Patricia Muscarella. You know, there's a funny thing in called the judicial canons. All right, and the judicial canons are rules that the judges have to abide by. Right? It's ethics. Yeah. They're rules. They're canons. And you know, a judge is not supposed to preside over a case that they have a conflict of interest in.
Yes.
A judge is not supposed to preside over a case that they have a financial interest in. A judge is always supposed to give the appearance that there's a fair trial.
Yeah, recusal. They're supposed to recuse themselves.
Yes, but our judge didn't do that. Our judge didn't do that. Why?
Of course not.
Of course not. So they hid the evidence of the blank ballots. And then this crooked judge says, okay, send me everything you have and I'll take a look at it and I'll make my ruling. So I presented all of the evidence that we had collected to the judge. And then the judge made a ruling. The clerk of court, for some reason, never notified me, right? Wow, why would the clerk of court do that? Oh, wait, to disadvantage a pro se litigant. So what ends up happening is after the time elapsed for me to appeal the decision, the Pinellas County Supervisor of Elections Office hands over some of the data with regards to the blank ballots that we were inquiring about in these reports that we were asking the judge to give to us. Well, I guess they didn't realize that I had the opportunity to reopen the case based on new facts and evidence. The new facts and evidence being the fact that there were very, very large numbers of blank ballots that were cast in the election. And
in the Pinellas County or Pasco or both?
Pinellas County. Pasco, I don't have all the numbers there because Brian Corley doesn't like to give all the stuff there.
Yeah, I can attest for that. I asked for the cast vote records for my primary and still never got them.
Of course not, which, by the way, he's required by law to do and hand over to you. So that makes us ask other questions, right? Yeah. So if they're openly violating the law with regards to public records, which is a constitutional violation of your rights, right? It's a violation in Florida. What else are they? Why would an elected official do that? Why would they break the law in order to not comply with your?
Because they know they can get away with it, one, and two, they're trying to cover their tracks. CYA.
That's right. Exactly. Now, here's the funny thing, right, about what we see. There's a bunch of laws against this. And, what we saw in 2022 is Ron DeSantis went around parading these felons who mistakenly voted because they were told they could vote, right? Yeah. But they left alone the election fraud kingpins that work at the SOE's offices, where all the real fraud goes on.
So do you know who most of these people are, right? And so is any of the parties helping with this fraud, like the Democratic Party and Republican Party of Pinellas involved in any of this stuff too? Like, are you able to kind of lead people? People want to know names so they can go find, that way we can start holding people accountable, Chris.
Yeah. Well, we know that the RPOF, they don't want election integrity. The RPOF,
of course they don't. Yeah.
They're trying to hide that. They're trying to hide the evidence of the fraud because they've been big beneficiaries of it.
And now who are you dealing with that now? Because Christian Ziegler is the RPOF guy now, which I'll let you comment on that. And then, but the guy before that was, what's his name? I forget. I'm forgetting it off the top of my head.
Oh, he was the guy from Sarasota.
Yeah,
Yeah, the crooked guy.
Gruters, Joe
Yeah,
Gruters.
Joe Gruters, the other crooked guy.
Yeah, sorry. Go
So,
ahead. So I'm breaking it down for people so that way they
yeah,
know.
yeah, no worries. So ultimately, I we went with a bunch of stuff with regards to the roles to the Pinellas County GOP, and it was at the time it was Todd Jennings and Adam Ross,
Adam
and
Ross and Todd Jennings.
yeah. So now what was interesting is Adam Ross is the executive director for the state attorney's office.
Yes.
Yeah. So he has a duty to act, a
Yes.
legal duty to act.
That's why I'm glad you brought this up, because I wanted to pick your brain there a little as to someone who's in that office, who can talk to the state attorney's office as well, and has
They
seen
choose
election fraud data or any sort of corruption. Why isn't he bringing it?
That's a good question. That's a real good question. Probably because he's been the beneficiary of it or is a part of it. And so we had brought a lot of stuff to them to discuss about the voter rolls and about vote by mail fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And Todd Jennings and Adam kind of chuckled and said, well, in Pinellas County, we kind of benefit from that here. And I'm like, really? I go, well, then why did Joe Biden beat Donald Trump? And they got really sensitive about that. And I'm like, clearly that didn't work out so good, did it? And and then one of the guy I was with, they got into a real heated shouting match. And it was the voice of reason. And I tried calming them down. And I said, look at guys, I go, we're not, we want is clean elections. I go, and at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, right? And stopping, the overthrow of our nation by bad actors. I go, so, are we not on the same team here or what? And so we started talking about stuff, and Adam Ross, the executive director for the Sixth Circuit State Attorney's Office, he's the executive director, tells me that every election since the beginning of time has had cheating in it, and there was nothing that I was going to be able to do to stop it.
Wow. Now let me ask you something. He's the current president or chairman of the REC Pinellas, right?
That he is. And, he did a really good job of trying to shut down any investigation by the Election Integrity Committee. And so that makes me ask some questions, right?
Yeah. And Todd Jennings was the vice chairman, right?
Well, no. Originally, at the time, Todd Jennings was the chair and Adam was the vice.
Okay.
And then a lady by the name of Kathy Chamberlain ran against Adam. And there was a bunch of impropriety in that election. So Adam really knows all about fraudulent elections. And he likes to participate in them.
So how do you navigate through the Pinellas County, even Republican Party system?
Well,
so was there any fraudulent elections in Pinellas that you have the data and evidence?
Every single one of them.
From Congress all the way down to local, huh?
Yep, absolutely. Now, here's the thing, right? They think that they're smart, but they're not that smart. And they don't understand technology, not the way we do. And so what I do is I've got, it's okay. That's why talented people who understand tech need to get involved in this. And
yes, sir. Thank God for you. Thank God for God using you.
Yes. And that's who drives everything that I do. And so, what's funny, right, is as we look at the data, we look at the data in other counties where they're not cheating this way. We look at the data in other states where they're not entirely cheating this way. We look at the data in other states where they are doing this. And we see stuff. And so we start asking questions, right?
Are there
So
any
we
states, Chris,
saw
real quick? Are there any states that aren't cheating?
everybody cheats a different way, or they cheat in a variety of different ways. But central to the big cheat, right, are
Yeah,
the elect are the voting machines,
for
are
sure.
the dirty voter rolls, are the vote by mail. So because
Yeah.
they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, you say. Because if they put all their eggs in one basket, then you have problems. So what they do is they split it up. They do it so that they hedge their bets because they've been at this for a long time,
Yeah.
right?
And you said
They've
this
been
is
at
a RICO case, so that could go back for decades, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure can. And in Maryland, in fact, what we discovered was that they haven't had a legal election since at least 2014, 2015, at least.
And so that could even change all the amendments that were supposedly voted on and passed. Like here in Pasco, supposedly people voted in the primary and in the general election to raise their taxes.
Yeah.
And
Who in
now
their right mind would do that?
I'm trying to figure that out. I have no idea, but apparently maybe a lot here in Pasco County.
Yeah. I'm willing to bet that's probably not the case. And
Me too.
I'm willing to bet that if we actually had real elections, we would see a dramatically different America today.
I
And
agree.
because I don't see that these people would keep getting elected again and again and again and again.
Now,
And
are you for putting serial numbers on the ballots, making it a national holiday, one day voting? You show up in person,
show
voter
up in
ID, you have
person,
to have
voter
signature.
ID, yeah, everything, the whole
Yeah,
9 yards, and no voting machines,
amen.
no,
Paper
no
ballots only, hand count.
paper
Local
ballots.
precincts can do the tally. You report it in just like the old days,
Yep.
and
And
it's
it
clean and clear.
all on video, all on
Yes,
video. So you go to Las Vegas, right? You go to a casino and they're watching everything and they can see your hand, they can see what's going on, right?
for
Well,
sure.
you should be able to do the same thing with elections.
Yeah, I
So
agree. So, so I had a state rep on. I think it was before the
Bernie
Thanksgiving
Jacques,
holiday. Bernie Jacques, yes, sir. And he
yeah,
admitted on the show that illegal immigrants are voting in our elections
of course
here in
they
Florida.
are. And what's this? Yeah, and what's DeSantis doing about it? Nothing. I went to the DeSantis about it. I went to Maria Matthews about it. We brought the evidence to them. We said, "Hey,
What
what's
about
going
Cord
on
Bird?
here?"
What about Cord
Cord
Bird?
Bird too. Cord Bird, he's one of the chief co-conspirators in all of this
Yes. So
election
now,
rigging.
now, before you go on with him, wasn't Laurel Lee the Secretary of State? Wasn't she handling elections before she got endorsed to go to congressional seat 15?
That's right. We see a troubling
Trend.
pattern there with crooked election overseers, crooked secretaries of state, right? Then acceding into higher offices of public office. We saw that in Arizona. We saw it in Georgia. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this stuff needs to end. And we got
Yeah,
Laura Lee. I can tell you right now, I went to Laura Lee when I thought that she was good, with the largest campaign finance violations in Florida history,
wow.
actually United States history. And
Who was that? Who was that?
it was all tied to big tech, Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, and
Gates,
how
was Gates
uh,
involved in that?
Gates is involved in it. Google's involved with it. I mean, we're talking about $1 trillion campaign finance violations.
And Gates was trying to implement his Marxism and communism in our school systems
Yeah,
with that Gates
absolutely.
Foundation. I forget what it's called, but
So here's a fun fact, right?
yeah,
Especially here in Florida, all of our elections were administered on ES&S and Dominion machines, right?
yeah.
And the underlying technology was all on Windows 7 machines. Okay. And in 2020, Microsoft stopped supporting Windows 7 in January of 2020. You know, they ended up administering the election in November of 2020 on the same operating system that Bill Gates stopped supporting earlier in the year. So you had these systems that had gaping security holes in them. And they were all connected to the internet, by the way, in violation of the EAC certification, in violation of the Florida certification. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So they're all in on it. You know, it's a big club and you're not in it.
So do you think it all comes from DeSantis, order to DeSantis, since it seems like it's people he's appointed and endorsed specifically?
DeSantis has definitely played a large role in it, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean,
Do you have the evidence for that, though?
Well, he appointed Julie Marcus.
Yeah. No, I'm just this isn't me asking. This is just people that I'm being the person, the everyday on the street person.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, right? So Ron DeSantis had a press conference when they hauled in when they announced all the election crimes, right? Arrests.
Yes, sir.
He said in that press conference, and you know, I suggest people go and they do a Google search, right, for Ron DeSantis, Broward County election crimes, and they will be able to hear Ron DeSantis, in his own words, say, "We're going to retain all the election data from the 2020 election." Right? He said that. I remember he said that because I watched that press conference intently. And, you know, he said that they were going to retain all the data because I had asked him to retain all the data months before when we found significant evidence of crimes, right? And we said, you have to keep this. You got to retain the data. And to shut me up and the other people in election integrity, to shut us up and make us go away, they lied to us. They said, hey, we're going to keep all the data. But you know what happened? They didn't. They destroyed it. They destroyed the evidence of the 2020 rigged election here in Florida. You know what? That's a crime. When you try to conceal and destroy evidence, it's a crime. It's treason. Yeah. And Ron DeSantis played an active role in it. So Cord Bird.
Go ahead. Sorry. Cord Bird, what?
Cord Bird played a role in it as well. Cord Bird, I had a face-to-face meeting with him, with a couple of other people who were very, very instrumental in the fight for election integrity here in Florida. One was Raj Doraisamy, and the other one was Chris Quackenbush. Okay. And so we're in this meeting with Cord Bird, and you know, it was a very hostile meeting. And he started the meeting off by telling us, the problem with you people is this.
What do you mean, you people?
Yeah, exactly, you people. And he called us a bunch of keyboard warriors firing off public records requests. And I kind of chuckled and I said, you know, Cord, I've got a solution to the problem for you right now. And it'll take you less than 5 minutes and will cost you zero. I go, all you have to do is pick up your phone right now and call Maria Matthews, the director of the Florida Division of Elections. And I need you to tell her to order every single SOE in the state of Florida to take all the election data and put it into a folder on their website. It will cost you nothing, and it'll take 5 minutes to do on your part. And we just took care of 75% of the problem that we're here about right now. Oh, well, that's never going to happen. Why won't that happen? Why won't that happen, Cord? And so, you know, it won't happen because he's corrupt and he's hiding the evidence of the fraud. and they're trying to cover it up. And so since then, they've used all sorts of interesting things like SB 7050. SB 7050 is the Florida Election Fraud Legalization Act, where Court Byrd worked with David Ramba and the Florida Election Fraud Mafia to conceal the evidence of the rigging at the precinct level that we had uncovered across Florida. So they changed the law to hide the fraud, changed the law to hide the evidence. That sounds a little unconstitutional, sounds a little underhanded, sounds like a crime. So yeah, so that's the world we're playing in right now. A lot of treason, but they're not going to get away with it.
So where do you take, since a lot of the people are involved that are in our seats and in position of power? Well, really, it's the people that's in power, but they think the people that are in those seats are the powerful ones. Which, anyway, we'll get into that maybe if we have. But who do you take this stuff to? Do you go to President Trump? Do you go to the military with it? Like, in the military, who do you take it to? Do you go because if your local sheriff, because you can't go to the local sheriff, right? Because he's probably part of the problem too, right?
Well, I did go to the local sheriff, and the local sheriff wanted nothing to do about it. Galtieri wanted nothing.
Excuse me.
Galtieri wanted nothing to do with it. His thing was take it to the Election Crimes Division. Well, the Election Crimes Division is the biggest farce that there is. They don't investigate anything.
They're probably just trying to collect all the data of the people calling in about it so they can target them.
Probably. Well, what we do know is that Pete Antonacci, who was appointed by DeSantis, he ended up dead immediately after a very heated meeting, by the way, in Tallahassee over election crimes. He dropped dead.
Really? In Governor DeSantis' office or outside of it?
Yeah, or right out of it or in it. We don't know because they're trying to hide that data too, trying to hide that evidence.
Wow.
Kind of crazy.
Now, is Anthony Pedicini involved in any of this stuff? Because he's a big lobbyist for the Republican Party, which is a very establishment rhino part of the party that he supports. Is he involved maybe? And I'm just asking, I don't know the full evidence of a lot of this stuff, but I do know some players involved, and like you mentioned, my campaign was involved in this. So a lot of the stuff you're saying, I've seen for myself. So anyway, it's not about me. It's about just so others can be aware and know. So I'm asking these questions and letting you dissect it because you're very good and very, you've been putting in a lot of time and effort and hard work and time away from your family for this. And people need to just know like how many people are sacrificing in order to save our world and our republic and our communities.
There are some great people out there who are working really hard, and they are making a lot of sacrifices, myself included. But here's the thing. There's a lot of bad actors too, and there's a lot of controlled opposition. So you've got some groups out there like Florida Free Elections, FFE, and they're the people who run it aren't necessarily the good people. They're controlled opposition. And they hoodwink a lot of good people who think that they're contributing to a good fight, but they're being sent down stupid rabbit holes in busy work that don't yield anything. Now, we'll go back to your go back to your Pedicini thing. I personally haven't dug into anything related to Pedicini. I know that Jeff Dow has done a lot of work with that, mapping out Pedicini. What I can tell you is that I keep hearing this guy's name, and I've been primarily focused at things at the national level with campaign finance. More recently I started digging into more stuff at the state, because for your people who may or may not know this, all of the James O'Keefe Act Blue stuff, that's all my data. That's all my work that James has been helping expose. And so what we've done is, in exploring these Smurfs, this money laundering network, first it was Act Blue. Then we noticed that a lot of the rhinos were doing it via WinRed. And so we started reporting on that. We tried to get people to look at it. And the Epoch Times has done a bunch of stuff. Gateway Pundit has done a bunch of stuff. Creative Destruction Media, the Georgia Record, Laura Loomer, Roger Stone. They've all reported on a lot of this stuff. And so I've been working in multiple states on this, and we really flushed this stuff out in Wisconsin with the Janet Prostakowicz campaign, and then that led us into Alvin Bragg, and then that led us into Josh Call, the Attorney General for Wisconsin, and then that led us to Letitia James in New York, and that led us into Fannie Willis in Georgia. And
so real quick, Letitia James, that's why she's going after President Trump really hard, because he has so I don't know if you know who Maria Zack is, Chris.
Yeah, I do. I know Maria personally. Yeah.
Yeah, Nations in Action. She's given her election fraud from Italy over to Rudy Giuliani, who, according to him, gave it to President Trump. So
President Trump is definitely very well aware of
your evidence as well, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, he is. And now here's the thing. At first, when I first got into this, I thought DeSantis was a good guy, and I was very supportive of him. And then as I started finding stuff out and seeing stuff, I saw that he really wasn't a good guy. And he was actually the beneficiary of this large fraud machine. And that was really disappointing to me, right? And then I started to see that a lot of other people who should have, would have, could have been involved in this, really, they want nothing to do with it either. And that's a problem, right? So I've been involved in a bunch of the data collection for a bunch of different lawsuits. There was the Gibson Group versus Maryland lawsuit. And that's been an absolute, we absolutely caught them in Maryland on this stuff. And we know for a fact that they have illegally administered elections in Maryland. And they've illegally been hiding the audit logs for the voting systems. And we've been so efficient at getting data and collecting evidence across the country on this stuff that ES&S, the manufacturer they're the largest manufacturer of voting systems in the world. They ended up sending a letter to all of their customers, warning not to give me the data and the testing in my public records requests all across America. They don't want people to see logs for our own elections.
Wait, hang on, Chris. You broke up a little bit. They don't want what?
They don't want to see the evidence. They don't want us to see the public records of our own elections.
And hence why they try to charge you thousands of dollars too to see this, right?
The fraud. They want to hide the evidence. That's right. So that they are required by law to provide, because it's a public record that is automatically generated in the course of them doing their duty. Right? Now, what they can do is they can try to claim all kinds of wacky exemptions. They try to claim that they weren't automatically generated, which we know that they were, because we have the manual, so we know that they were automatically generated. Heck, ES&S markets this In order for the machines to even be certified for use, they have to generate an automatic audit record of everything that's been done. So why exactly can we, the people, not know what's going on in our elections? Because I mean, the audit log is a date timestamp of every activity and every event that occurs. Now, why don't they want that? Well, I've seen the audit logs in Georgia. I saw the audit logs there. And you know why? Because that's where the evidence of the fraud is, where you can see the machines illegally adjudicating ballots either as unreadable or as blank. And for every blank or unreadable ballot that machine adjudicates illegally, behind the scenes is a voter who had their right to cast a vote in the election interfered with from being cast, and their votes, the votes that they wanted to cast for whatever, were completely invalidated and didn't count. How about that?
So, okay, so you have that, and then you have illegal immigrants voting in our elections.
Yes.
And then a friend of mine who voted in 2022 went in her voter booth in Hillsborough County and saw that those machines had Wi-Fi going, and she connected to the Wi-Fi in Hillsborough County.
Yep.
And so with all that and mail-in ballots, how do you win a free and fair election? Like, what's the point of someone like me running for office? What is the point of someone, just any good person who wants to make a difference? What is the point for them to run for office? What's the point of people even voting? Hello? Is there a delay? Can you hear me, Chris?
You're breaking up a little bit for some reason. I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, I was saying, okay. Can you hear me better now?
So what's
Can you hear me now?
Point?
Yeah. What's the point of running for office, and what's the point of voting if you're the everyday person?
You know, I can hear you better. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear
Chris,
you now. Hello? Yep. I'm here.
Okay. I wonder if we're getting screwed with because we're talking election fraud and you're giving too much evidence and facts.
Probably, you know.
But anyway, so I don't know if you heard my question. My question is for the everyday person who's hearing this and listening to this and has always thought there is fraud going on, and how do they have hope to beat the system? What makes them showing up to vote worth it? Like, is their vote going to count? Is someone running for office who wants to actually make a difference? Are they just wasting their time, money, and efforts? Because if they have every single control aspect of the elections and they keep stealing it, what makes someone should get out of bed to even vote? Can you hear me at all? Chris, did you hear any of that?
I can hear you.
Did you hear the question?
I did. So I did hear the question.
Just from your view. Okay.
So from my view, we have to go through the motions of going out to vote. All right. That's our duty. Now, is my vote being counted? I don't think it is. I don't think anybody's vote is at this point with what I'm seeing in various municipalities. So there are some places where your vote does count. Not everywhere. And certainly not if the machines are connected to the internet, they're not going to count. Certainly not when they're flipping votes on machines like they did in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago, because we know that they're doing it that way. The only shot that we have, okay, in 2024 is if we demand that they get rid of the voting machines, no vote by mail, voter ID, day of the election. It's still early enough to do that. But if everybody doesn't stand up and say enough now, it's a wrap. It's an absolute wrap.
Yeah. So how can people review this evidence? I know. Did you watch Mike Lindell's Cyber Symposium?
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing. Everybody needs to be asking why they're not releasing the audit logs. Okay. That's what everybody in Florida needs to do. You all need, everybody in Florida, everybody in America, they need to go to their supervisor of elections office. Everybody show up. Why are you hiding the audit logs? Why? Why are you hiding the audit logs? That's really what we need to be doing. Because once we look at logs, and by the way, I do have a couple of audit logs from here in Florida. I have a heavily redacted audit log out of Clay County in Florida. And I have another heavily redacted audit log out of Hillsborough County, Florida. Now, I do have some unredacted audit logs from other states. And when you look at the differences between these audit logs, you can see exactly why they're redacting what they're redacting. Mm-hmm. Redacting the evidence of the big cheat. So we need unredacted audit logs. What we need is for them to get rid of the voting machines. And, we need people to support the work of election integrity people like myself and others out there who are actually doing real work. Okay. So, that's what we need.
So for people who might even think you're a conspiracy theorist now, let's pick the brain of those people.
So we have conspiracy theory and conspiracy fact. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm playing devil's advocate. That's what I do.
Yeah. So how many facts do you need to prove the conspiracy fact?
As opposed to conspiracy? And where can people see this though? Where can people review it at? That, like, if people want to, there are people that have to see it for their own selves type of people. Where can they go to view it? Like, do you have a website or someone that where you've posted, or just spitball? Like I said, I'm a devil's advocate when I'm doing these things. Hello? Can you hear me, Chris?
Lost
Can you hear
connection there for a second.
Oh, okay. No, I'm saying, so where can people view this stuff at? Because I know people want to see this for their own eyes. They're those type of people. Where can they view it at?
So in some places within the court documents. So if you look at the Kerry Lake case, okay, there's a lot of stuff going on there in Arizona. The evidence in the court records, there's evidence that they're not necessarily wanting people to see or understand. And I know that's kind of hard. I know that the Gateway Pundit does a lot of good reporting. I know Creative Destruction Media does a lot of good reporting. Laura Loomer does a lot of good reporting. My Substack is a great place. If you're in
Where Florida, can they go to that? Where can they view that at?
Sure. That's Immutable Truth Elections.substack.com. Immutable Truth Elections.substack.com.
Before the show ends, Tate, we'll let you promote wherever people can find you and see that stuff again. I just wanted to at least go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of evidence out there within the case that I filed against Julie Marcus. There's evidence there. And I'm posting more and more stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there. There is a lot of stuff out there. And there's here, I believe, Professor Clements, he has a site. It's called hereistheevidence.com. And they have, he posts a lot of stuff there too. So
Okay. And so again, like, how do you?
But there's a
Who
lot
do
of
you
it.
take this stuff
And
to?
Chris,
Yeah, but how? So do you go? You can't go to the FBI, right? Because they're pretty. Seems like they're for the Communist Party, Marxism. So who do you go to present this evidence to even make a difference? Hello.
at this point, it's about lawfare. Yep. I'm, so at this point, it's about lawfare. It's about filing lawsuits. It is about filing lawsuits. It's about getting other people to understand what's going on. Because at the end of the day, right, if you have corrupt judges and you've got corrupt officials, okay, the highest court in the land is the court of public opinion, okay? And so we are fighting this. We're fighting it everywhere. And we are winning in some places. We've made we've made great inroads in Wisconsin. We've got people, the election integrity people, and they're all fired up now. They're trying. You have to hold your local people accountable. And so, if you walk in, you want to, what? Most people, they won't believe it unless they see it for themselves.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So go and ask for the election summary results from your local supervisor of elections office and ask them how many blank ballots were cast in the election.
Okay.
How many ballots were duplicated?
What else? What else? So say you're someone who's never done this before. You don't know what you're doing, and people want to go down there. So they do that, and then is there anything else they would ask and request?
Ask for the audit logs. The audit logs are really easy. You just walk in and say, "Hey, I'd like to get an electronic copy of the audit logs. I want to get an electronic copy of the audit logs for the election in my precinct or just for the county." And they have to give it to you.
Now can they request cast vote records as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a cast vote record is automatically generated. And by the way, there are, what I'll do is I will share with you or actually, even if you just sent, I did a series of posts over the past couple days talking about corrupt judges and corrupt election officials. And there was a screenshot of an email between Maria Matthews and one of the election supervisors, where she instructed him that he absolutely had to hand over the cast vote records because they're automatically generated. Now, so if somebody's telling you, no, they don't have to give them to you, they're lying. And they're breaking the law. So how many laws are these people going to be able to get away with breaking?
Well, until we have someone who's willing to arrest them, I guess until then.
Or until we, the people, have said enough is enough.
Yeah. So what do we the people do? Like, what do the masses need to do?
They all need to show up at the supervisor of elections office, like look in Pasco County, and say, we want the unredacted audit logs for the election. We want them for the 2020 election. We want them for the 2022 election. We want them. We demand them right now. Our tax dollars pay for them.
Yeah. And so what if they tried to charge people for them?
Well, here's the thing. What are they charging them for? It's in their original electronic format. It doesn't cost them anything. All they have to do is click and send. And that's it. That's it. There's no trade secrets in there. There's no critical national secret data. The only thing that's in there is the evidence of the fraud that they themselves have committed and the evidence of a stolen election.
Now, so I don't know how much more you have. I mean, I can keep you on as long as you want. But I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. If I'm an everyday person who doesn't know this stuff or who might just know it, but doesn't really